I want to thank the panelists for some extraordinary presentations. What I really liked was the vivid texture and detail brought to these stories about collaboration in particular places. I know I have a lot of questions that I could think of asking, but that I know you do too. So I would like to ask those people sitting at the tables to pose the questions. We have a roving microphone. If you can speak into that, then it will be easier for everybody to hear your question, and especially for the panelists to hear your question. So, question? Fire away. There's a lot on the table here.
For the Erie House for the Allied Healthcare Network that you put together, when you put together that kind of partnership, don't you need to have one entity that can accept the funding, and how did you decide where the money was actually going if you get funded?
Are these on? Yes. Okay. Yes, of course. And Erie House is the lead agency. I forgot to mention that. We figured we issued the invitation. And also, again, there's a trust relationship among this group of organizations. This was not the first time we worked together. So I think that we were lucky in that it wasn't like trying to pick among strangers, you know, who do you trust to hold the money. We also have agreed that going forward, even if we don't get the federal money, that doesn't mean Erie is always going to be the lead, but for the federal grant, yes, we would accept the money and we would subcontract, and we asked for budgets then from all the partner organizations to help create one complete budget for the grant.
Let's see there. Yes.
I have two questions.
Here we are.
Number one, I have two questions. Number one, do you know of a standard template for a collaboration agreement?
No. I mean, I know there are, our organization, we have examples of what we call MOUs or, memorandums of understanding, or whether you want to call them a collaborative agreement. There are examples out there. Whether there is one, I would say you really have to then, refine that template to fit the particular group that's collaborating in this particular instance. So what works in one collaboration, it might not be exactly the same for another. But, there are certainly principles that will be similar.
Do you know where I might find one?
No, I don't. Maybe some of the other groups do. It's very possible that the various federal or state agencies have examples of this. I'm pretty sure they do. I'm just saying to be careful that, it doesn't always one size doesn't always fit all, and you might have to add some modifications.
Okay. Thank you. Second question. You mentioned a software. Would you repeat the name?
Sure. The software is called Efforts to Outcomes, or ETO for short. The company that has developed it is called Social Solutions.
Called what?
Social Solutions. And it is based in Baltimore, actually, in Bob's current backyard. And oh, there you go. So Annie Casey originally gave him some dollars to get it started, I guess. So that's so good taste all the way around. We linked together. We shopped around. We actually formed a collaborative. Some of the members who are now in the healthcare collaborative we worked together to search for an appropriate database tool, if you will, appropriate software. And so that was also some experience in working together. And they were, a helpful company. We searched several possibilities, and they turned out to be a good choice for us.
Thank you. You've been helpful.
Thank you. I had a question about developing measures. Like, other than documentation? Can you give me some examples of some other things that would be adequately like measured as far as like evaluating your program or a program?
Well, I think it depends on the program. I know in the workforce arena, for example, our measures tend to be around, at least the way we think about it, is job placement. I think as Maureen said, there's then job retention, there's career advancement, those kind of things. Within the world of tax credits, access to earned income tax credit, it's not simply, you can have measures that relate to applying, but the real key one is, did you get it, and then what did you use it for? The measures around community engagement are trickier, but very important. I know you almost have to rely on surveys. Do people feel more engaged? Have they been consulted? How many meetings have they gone to? There's a lot of work that's been done in that area that we could probably share to you. So there's kind of more programmatic measures which are a bit easier. Then there's a set of community building, more civic measures, which I think are really important if you're investing in this leadership side of things, but they're trickier to sort of collect on an ongoing basis.
The other one that I would say that we've had to kind of document is what comes out of it. So what are the physical improvements? What are the other dollars that come into a neighborhood as a result of some seed money or some point of beginning? So I think that's an important one.
Taya, where's the microphone?
It's here.
Oh.
The question is, if you have a transient community.
Right, people who come in and, they might show back up, or, it's kind of like a revolving door. How do you adequately measure that? Can you give me some suggestions?
How do you measure it in relation to what? To employment outcomes?
To what services? Meaning, I am a spiritual advisor, kind of like I teach Qigong for a program called Project Brotherhood. And I think one of our difficulties is because of the community that we service, some of those people, we might not see them for a year and then they come back in. So how do you kind of like measure that if they're not there consistently?
Well, I'll tell you, I know this may not be the satisfactory answer you want, but one piece of advice I would give is be very clear about the community you do serve and do not overpromise what you cannot deliver. My method is always underpromise and overdeliver. I usually find myself in better shape as a result. So yeah, you can't describe the same kind of community I work with, which is, immigrants come and invest and live there for, years and years. So you have to determine then what's the appropriate service and what are the outcomes that you can persuade your funder are the realistic outcomes. And then those you have to deliver. So it may be simply the participation, that levels of participation, and maybe the challenge is to get funding to do some long-term follow-up that tell them, look, I can't tell you about the impact of this in a month or 6 months, but if I can do some long-term study and follow-up, then I might be able to get you some results. So be honest, be clear about what's possible, and negotiate.
My question is, Lynn spoke about this a little, and that is, could you talk a little bit more about the role that elected officials played in helping you either build your coalitions or champions on behalf of your coalitions? I see you're shaking your head. If they weren't there at all, how did you shame them into, helping you?
Well, it differs so much in terms of place and so on.
That's a place-based problem too.
The story I told about Seattle, there's a fairly, although these things are up and down, collaborative culture. So we got the county executive who was, we knew him through organizing. He was in the same parish as some of the other leaders, and he had a social justice kind of orientation, and so he was kind of a leader on this, and really pointed in the direction. And oftentimes, if you get one champion, other politicians will come around them. Now, there's lots of other examples that I could say that are just the opposite of that, where the political official, it's all about them, and it's not about collaboration, it's not about the residents, and you really have to do a lot of work to either go around them or get them accountable. So it really does differ by place, and I'm sure all of us could give lots of inspiring as well as depressing examples, but it takes work.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, I mean, you know, Erie House is an institution of distinction in our community, so all of our state and public officials love us. They look for photo opportunities to stand next to us. But does that get us any more money? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes they're as clueless about navigating the system as we are. I mean, clearly, we have no problem getting letters of support. You know, we submit a federal proposal, we get Senator Durbin, we get Congressman Gutierrez, no sweat. But does that, you know, is that really the winning strategy? I don't know. It's more than that. I don't, you know, the whole political ramifications of, I think one of the earlier presentations talking about, well, on the one hand, there's the objective apolitical criteria. I'm not so sure that there is such a thing as apolitical in some ways, but then you get other times where the political officials, you know, public officials contribute to the chaos. I mean, we just had an example that here in Illinois, there's a new governor's youth initiative that was just announced. And their first strategy was to ask the aldermen of the city of Chicago to name a lead agency in their ward. So 50 lead agencies were named for what would be, I think, 15 grants. Now, the good news about where I am, so Erie House, we were named by the first ward alderman, Chicago Commons was named by their alderman, Casa Central was named by their alderman. The state then called the groups and said, we're not going to make this decision. You guys talk amongst each other and let us know what you decide. In our case, because we collaborate a lot already, the 3 executive directors put their heads together and said, okay, we're picking one, it's you. And we all agreed how we would share both the funds and the responsibilities. But I'm sure in many areas that was much more problematic.